Okay, chapter 3 is called Fooling the FBI. I wonder what Casey was up to when she went to that pizza place. When they walked into the kitchen, Casey's mom was filling a vase with water at the sink. She had on a pretty yellow dress and high heels. Mom, why are you all dressed up? Casey asked. The president set the pizza on the table. Did I forget something? He asked. Are we going somewhere? Yes, Zachary, you did forget something, Lois said, smiling. We have to go to the New England governor's lunch. President Thornton smacked himself on the forehead. Bad, President. When do we have to be there, Lois? He asked. Lois glanced at the kitchen clock. We have 20 minutes. Kids, do you want to come along? No thanks, Mom, Casey said, rolling her eyes at Marshall. Boring. So we get a whole pizza to ourselves, Marshall said as he peeked inside the box. You'd better save me some, the president said, and he rushed out of the room to change. Casey and Marshall sat at the kitchen table and each grabbed a slice of pizza. I have a cool idea, Casey said. Me too, Marsh said. Ice cream after the pizza. No, I want to get a Greyhound for the president, Casey said. What? Marshall asked. He nearly choked on his mouthful of pizza. Casey slapped him on the back until he stopped. Why get him a Greyhound? Marshall was finally able to ask. Because he wants one. Did you hear him talking about it last night? Oh yeah, when we saw that guy with the dog, Marshall said. Casey nodded as she nibbled her pizza. While you were still sleeping this morning, I found a website on my computer. It's called Adopt a Greyhound. The place rescues greyhounds after they stop racing at the tracks, then finds home for the dogs. And I want to get one. Awesome, Marshall said. So where do we get them? There's a dog track just outside of D.C., Casey said. It was listed on the website. She patted her backpack. I printed out the directions. Maybe we could check it out today. I need to go out anyway to mail a letter to my dad. And we need to investigate this fireworks mystery some more. Something in the FBI building is really fishy. We need to investigate, Marshall said. Casey, in case you haven't noticed, the FBI is on the case. Casey watched a long string of cheese droop down onto Marshall's chin. That cheese reminded her of something. But what was it? Suddenly, she jumped up. Marsh, I just remembered something. There was no pizza in the box. What box? Marshall asked. The box in the trash can at the FBI office. The inside was totally clean. No tomato sauce, no sticky globs of cheese. You said it yourself. Marshall stared at her. So why was a never-been-used pizza box in the trash can? He asked. Casey took a bite of her slice. I don't know. She chewed slowly and concentrated hard. Maybe a pizza guy came to the FBI pretending to make a delivery, only instead of pizza, he had fireworks inside of the box. But why? Casey asked. Beats me, Marshall said. He reached for another slice. But whoever it was did go to a lot of trouble. For one thing, there was a guard there. Yes, Joe Salucci, Casey said, her eyes open wide. Marsh, he might know who brought the pizza box into the FBI. Casey jumped up again and cleared the table, sticking the leftover pizza box in the fridge. She grabbed her backpack and rushed out of the president's residence. Marshall ran after her, gulping down the rest of his pizza. 15 minutes later, they arrived at the FBI building, completely out of breath. A guard in a dark uniform was sitting behind the counter staring at a TV monitor. The doors were locked, but he looked up when Casey tapped on the glass. He walked over while pulling a wad of keys out of his belt. He chose the right key, unlocked the door, and held it open. Casey glanced at the name tag. It said Joe Salucci. Hello, miss, Joe said to Casey. I saw you here earlier today. What brings you back? Is the president with you? He leaned out the door to check down the street. No, not this time, but he's real worried about those rockets that went out the window last night. We want to ask you some more questions, okay? Joe looked at the two kids. He pulled on his nose and scratched his chin. I guess, but I don't know anything about any rockets. The kids followed Joe into the lobby. They sat in a couple of chairs meant for visitors. The president and the fire chief think someone in the office last night shot the rockets, Casey said. Joe shook his head. The office was locked. No one was in the building but me and Mr. Wrinkle. Who's he? Asked Marshall. Lawson Wrinkle, on the 3rd floor, room 303, Joe said. He's here every Friday night, working late. Did he order a pizza by any chance? Casey asked. Joe opened his eyes wide and nodded. Now, how'd you know that, miss? He asked. He gets one every Friday night, right at 9 o'clock. Who delivers it? Marshall asked. I mean, which pizza shop? Red's Pizza, said Joe. They have a red truck, and all their workers wear red shirts and red caps. The boxes are red too, right? Casey asked. Joe nodded. What did the delivery person look like? Casey asked. Joe closed his eyes for a second. A guy about my height, red shirt and a baseball cap, tinted glasses, and a tattoo of a leopard on his right arm, right here. Joe touched his right forearm. Well, what color was his hair? Marsh asked. Joe grinned. It was blonde and really long. In those braid things, not braided braids like girls wear, just long, stringy like. Dreadlocks? Casey asked. That's it, Joe said. Then he chuckled. By 9 o'clock, I'm usually pretty hungry. When I smelled that pizza, my stomach goes crazy. Mr. Wrinkle always saves me a couple of slices and then drops them off for me when he leaves. Casey remembered the empty pizza box in the trash can. Did he save any pizza for you last night? She asked. Joe tugged on his nose. Nope, Mr. Wrinkle called on his cell phone and said that he was waiting for an important call from London, so that I should send the pizza guy up. Guy gets here, signs in, and I send him up. A little later, Mr. Wrinkle calls my phone again. This time, he says he never got his pizza. So the guy went upstairs with the pizza box, but never delivered it, Casey said. She stood up and started pacing back and forth. Casey looked at Marshall. I'll bet the pizza guy set off those rockets. Joe shook his head. But that room, it was locked, he said. Do you know his name? Casey asked. Joe shook his head. Red's had a lot of delivery folks, he said. I never saw this one before. Joe snapped his fingers, then hurried over to the counter. He picked up the sign-in clipboard and carried it back to the seat. He signed in. Joe flipped back to the page. Oh, rats. What? Casey asked. He didn't write his name. He turned the clipboard so that Casey and Marshall could read what was there. The sheet was laid out with long lines for a name, then 2 short spaces to write what time you signed in and what time you signed out. On the line for July 4th, someone had scrawled the words, Red's Pizza. He signed in at 9 o'clock, but he didn't sign out again, Marsh said. Joe set the clipboard on his lap. So you think this pizza guy came in and just set off those rockets? But why? That's what the president wants to know, Casey said, standing up. Thanks, Mr. Colucci. Come on, Marsh. Where are we going? Marshall asked as he hurried down the FBI steps. To Red's Pizza, she said. I want to talk to this dreadlocks guy. Oh boy, she's getting closer to figure it out. Our next chapter is called Chapter 4, The Disappearing Pizza Guy. I wonder what that's all about.